Okay, so let's dissect this a little bit. First thing is I added a little bit of CSS to make sure that the thumbnail image that we scrape when displayed is a max 300 by 300. This will be in your files already. Let's look at the main HTML. This bit of code is taken from Angular Strap and Angular Motion. The data animation is AM, Fade, and Scale, which corresponds to a class in the Angular Motion CSS and creates the effect of when we click on the modal of it having playing and closing like that. Data placement is center. We are using the data template URL definition here, which will propagate the modal HTML in our folder right here. And BS modal just makes sure that we're showing the modal and is defined already in our controller up here. It's defined by my modal and show modal. Let's take a look at the add look modal. So we have form ng submit add scrape post. So this is a method that we haven't created yet that will post to our back end when we click the submit button. We see ng model look.title, and this is what we're watching. Or excuse me, we're watching look.link. See, we're watching look.link, and this is a standard watch function parameters, new value and old value. So we're saying if what's submitted to the input is more than 5 characters in length, then we want to set the scope.loading to true, which is going to set our loading animation, and we're going to post the URL that's been submitted to our backend. And if the URL includes the word Pinterest, then we'll go ahead and scrape the data. And this is what will happen after we successfully scrape the data. So after posting, it will return a promise, which is handled by the .then method. So we set these to true, this to false, and we set the data equal to data image data description. Now we can see this happening, and we'll take a look at that in just one moment. This is our error handling. So if there is an error, we're going to set loading to false. We're going to set look.link back to blank and GotScrape results to false. And then finally will happen after the .then method, and we'll set the loading again to false and the look form to false as well. So let's see what happens again. Okay, and this error that is in the console is always going to happen because we're watching for this element. So I'm logging what we've scraped both to our console and to our node console as well. There is no description on this particular one. Normally there is. So we can see the description is blank. This is the URL. This is the media that we've received, which is the same that's down here. Some of the time we get back data, and some of the time we just get back the object. And that's why we're saying data.data. This data represents whatever it is that we receive back from our post or from our get. Then depending upon what we get back, we can manipulate it or attach it to our variables. So again, that's why we have to use data.data, and then we can say we can use description, image, or URL, and we can attach it. So data.image is right here. Data.description would be right here. And that's why it comes up blank, as you can see in our description. Now I want to refactor out our HTTP post into a factory. So under our components, let's create a new folder called API Factory. And this will hold all of our API factories that we create from now on. Make it scrape API.js. At the top of my factories, I always will declare whatever public functions that we are going to be exporting. So I'm going to declare these at the top. I'm going to return these, whatever that they're going to be. So right now, I'm going to create a function that's called getScrapeDetails, and I will export it as an object. It's a good idea to always separate out whatever is considered business logic into a factory. Just good practices, and it also makes it testable. So now we're going to inject our newly created Scrape API into our main controller. But first, let's make sure that we add it to our index.html. I'm going to replace our HTTP with our newly created factory. And I'm going to pass in this link. So this is the same thing. As you can see here, we are posting to our route API link scrape. And in our scrape API, we're still posting to API link scrape, and we're passing in the link. So here we did it manually. We're manually inputting URL scrape.look.link. Here we're just defining a variable that's pointing to the same object. Let's use one with a description. And it works just the same.